Hey everyone, welcome back to the Weekly Awakening Podcast. Is your host, Cosmic Colleen, back with another episode 286. Who am I? 2 episodes, 1 week? I just thought of something so bad. My millennials will know, every time I say 2 and 1, I think of 2 girls, 1 cup. I'm sorry, I can't not think about it, especially we all know what that is, unless you're younger than a millennial. It's funny how back in the day, something along those lines, like a video or a story or a topic, and it doesn't seem so long ago, went viral for like months. And there was one. And it's now there's 1 million a day. 1 million a day. No wonder none of us have attention spans. No wonder we're looking for the next quick hit all the time, and we can blame the media on that. But this is not a conspiracy podcast, unless you think astrology is conspiracy. So let's talk about what I'm going to talk about on this week's episode, or the second episode of this week. So this is totally dedicated to Saturn ingressing into Aries, Neptune ingressing into Aries, which Neptune is already there. Saturn ingresses tomorrow, Friday the 13th, and then the fated Neptune-Saturn conjunction in the sign of Aries coming up next Friday, February 20th. Check out the other episode I dropped this week for more info on Venus and Mercury in the sign of Pisces, as well as next week's solar eclipse in the sign of Aquarius. So I talked about that, the solar eclipse in Aquarius, on the other episode I dropped this week. And I talked about how we need to show up and create change through showing up for our community and spreading love in our community. That's the best way we can sort of fight the conscious battles that are happening right now in this world, to put it nicely. We are going to, again, need to fight even more with these next 2 planets moving into the sign of Aries. I don't want to scare you with these episodes, but these 2 shifting into Aries is going to bring a lot of energy, a lot of passion, a lot of drive, a lot of good things. But collectively and in other ways, it's going to be much harsher and harder than these both planets in the sign of Pisces. So for those of you who have just started to pay attention these last couple years of astrology, you will be able to see the difference between these 2 planets shifting from Pisces into Aries. That's how obvious it's going to be, and it'll give you an idea of how the energy is as well as Pisces into Aries. So pay attention. Aries, the god of war, the planet that likes to separate, individualize themselves from others, isn't necessarily the most compassionate sign. Aries, I love you guys. Yes, you guys are very passionate, but not very compassionate. Cutthroat, and, you're cutthroat, you're starving. These next 2 years, you're going to see compassion for others go down in the collective. I mean, some of you might be like, how is it going to go down even more? I'm sorry, I hate to tell you, it is. And there is going to be a lack of empathy, adding to that cutthroat energy. If you thought these 2 planets in Pisces was cutthroat, wait till you see it in Aries. But it is a new beginning. Now, like I said, you can be like, oh God, no, I can't take it. Or you can show up to battle, like I said, and show up in your best frame. Help your community. Smile at others. Like I said on the other episode I guess I did this week, or maybe last week's episode. Smile. Do you know how much that can change someone's day and how infectious that is? Laugh, and then help others. Have conversation. Bring back connectiveness. That is how we fight this. But if you're just sitting around watching and reading the news all day long and Twitter and whatever else the fuck everybody watches, you're just going to be part of the problem. Honestly, you are. And you have to do more than just watch and obsess. That's not doing anything for your mind, body, and soul. So remember that. Don't get scared, but I am saying it is not getting easier. So fight this with consciousness. Fight this with love. That is the real power. Okay? So don't shoot the messenger. You can feel the energy already showing up in the collective, and it's going, like I said, to be more important to combat this lack of empathy with consciousness and empathy. So now we're going to talk about just Saturn and Aries. Self-sacrifice is going to be a big theme of this energy, and it always is anytime Saturn enters a new sign. And to see where your self-sacrifice is, look to where Aries is in your birth chart. Look to where you have Mars in your birth chart, and you will get a better idea of where this self-sacrifice is. Saturn is a very big planet of sacrifice. Aries Mars energy makes a sacrifice. Think about it. Goes to war, takes that fiery path, and will sacrifice itself for something that it believes in. Saturn and Neptune beginning this new cycle in Aries, where Neptune will be for 14 years and Saturn will be for 3 years, is going to kick off with sacrifice. I feel like especially that's like one of the first big themes when Saturn moves into a new one is boom, you're going to see the sacrifice right away. Cardinal signs, you all are going to be starting this transit. So that's my cardinal signs. You guys know who you are. Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. Cardinal signs, you are going to be starting this transit out with the desire or forced will, like I said, to make a sacrifice. Not all sacrifices, though, are bad. So don't get scared again when I say that word. We know that if we make certain sacrifices, the ones that we want the benefit at the end of that sacrifice, we will reap amazing rewards later, like saving money or exercising or stopping something you love because you know that it isn't the healthiest. In the end, it's stopping you from achieving that benefit. Those are all considered sacrifices, and you see the benefits later, which again, Saturn loves. When you make the sacrifices, the bigger the rewards. With Saturn, there is always this level, like I said, of sacrifice, responsibilities, taking on new responsibilities, things that aren't easy, so you have to do it anyway because that's just part of life. It's part of karma. If you don't like the word karma, I'm sorry, I do. It is big and it is small. It's the reaction or the full circle connectiveness to everything and anything we do, even saying our words. I was talking to my son about that with karma, and he's a God kid and a Jesus kid, and we were explaining that. He's like, is that I can't remember the questions he had right now. I wrote them down, but really interesting, deep questions, which is why I like to drive him to middle school, because that's when he'll open up and talk to me. So sacrifice is something that we can give up. And here's an example, right? This is a pretty large example of sacrifice. Becoming a parent is a huge sacrifice. You go from not really having to answer to or for anyone but yourself, for the most part, to having to totally answer to someone else and put their needs above your own every minute of every day, especially if you're a good parent. For most of us, we had parents, or maybe one parent, who did that for us. Now, that is a chosen sacrifice because you don't have to have kids, but some may come, that aren't of our choosing, and we're just thrown into them, right? So what I'm saying is it could be a sacrifice of your choosing for a better benefit. It could be a sacrifice of your choosing because you want to, expand life and consciousness, or it could be a sacrifice that you did not choose that was hard. When Saturn, I'll give you one more example for myself. When Saturn had first entered Pisces, and some of you have been listening to me and knowing me for that long, you know what I'm about to say, 3 years ago, leading up to that, my mom began having a lot of health issues. She had me late in life, so she is older. Even though I look so young, she is older. When Saturn entered that Pisces, and she's a Pisces and a Pisces Mercury, it started to really interact with my birth chart. I have a natal Mars in the 7th house, and that's where Pisces is, of relationships and the other people. So I had been taking care of my mother, and then when Saturn ingressed into Pisces and conjunct with my Mars, she got severely way worse. And it required me to give up a lot and make a daily sacrifice every day for her. And I wasn't ready for it. There I was, a 36-year-old girl taking care of someone in her mid-70s who, unfortunately, her health just declined mentally very, very bad, where she couldn't walk anymore. And I did not ask for that responsibility, but I had to do what I had to do. This is my mother. I'm the only relative that lives near her or in this area, and I did it for a really long time again. And then it got so much that my sister and I decided to split the responsibility, and she went down south to my sister's, and my sister is also a Virgo rising, and it was intense. So then she has now had the same sacrifice that she didn't want to, but she did, and she showed up, is taking care of my mother and failing health, and she's had it just as hard as well. And my mother's not getting any better, nevertheless. But that's what I'm saying. We didn't ask that. We didn't want it. And it was honestly one of the hardest responsibilities I probably ever had to take in my life. But we did it because of love. We did it because that's our mother. And we did it because sometimes you have to get out of your own way. And you're going to have to, part of life, do something you do not want to do. Okay, you're just going to have to do it, and you're going to have to get over it. It doesn't last forever, but you are going to have to do it. So for my cardinal placements, remember that with the sacrifice, not all of those sacrifices are going to be taking care of your aging parent and while having 2 young kids. However, who knows how it's going to show up, but take it strong. Take it as a warrior that you are. Saturn in Pisces was dissolving boundaries, and now we are building those boundaries back up with Saturn in Aries, and Saturn boundaries as well. I had said, I think on episode 2 weeks ago when Neptune entered Aries, we're now playing by Mars's game. Like we were previously playing by Jupiter's game and Jupiter's energy, and it's much slow moving, but now we're playing by Mars's energy. So Saturn and Neptune are going to show up very differently and quicker and sudden and going back and forth than it did in Jupiter's sign of Pisces. So we need to break down some boundaries, remember that. But what comes to the other side of that is maybe we need to build some back up. So we broke down some that were necessary in Pisces, but now we're like, maybe we actually should bring back that boundary, especially when Mercury's retrograding in Pisces. Or maybe we actually need new boundaries now. Cardinal placements, Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, y'all are going to be feeling, like I said, this the most about what I'm going to say. But there will be a collective feeling with this as well. Saturn and Aries. This is going to be just sort of the collective. This is some of the general energy. But again, my cardinal placements, you guys are going to be feeling this the most. Sudden or quick boundaries going back up. Stable actions, however, not at first. This comes over time while Saturn learns to get comfortable in Aries. There will be some lessons there for Aries around, lessons around impulse and impulse control. More individuality that is going to be happening in everyone as well as the collective. Individuality, like Aries is a very individualistic sign. They like to stand out. They like to be ahead of the game. They like to be different, right? In order to be the god of war, you're different and you feel different. So I think collectively and personally, people are going to be more like, you know what? This is who I am. I feel like we've become a little bit, with social media and things like that, we've become a little bit the same. The young generations, they are all the same. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. And people are scared to be something different. I think we're going to see that tamper out a little bit. And people are more like thriving on being different. Feeling separate or separating yourself from those around you. Mars's sign is a very separating. That's what Mars does. It separates. Aries separates. Again, a little bit of a damper on that magnetic, energetic feeling that Aries can have. There is this, I'm going to keep going, and I'm magnetic, I'm running on fire. Wow. When Saturn gets in there, it's like it's dimming the fire. It's in its fall. It doesn't work at its best, Saturn in Aries. It doesn't. So Saturn in Aries is like having to, it's cooling it down a little bit, stopping it, but there is going to be a little bit damper. Again, it's going to feel not as intense as Mars in Cancer felt, but my Aries placement especially, you are going to feel not maybe as energetic as you have. Lots of doses of reality. And in the beginning, you will feel more grounded. You will be able to take that energy and know how to place it in a stable way. But at first, you're going to feel like, I need my wild energy, passionate energy back again. Lots of doses of reality, especially coming from Saturn in Pisces, where we were just like in Delulu land. So lots of telling of the truth. This is a very truthful place for Saturn to be, whether you like it or not, exposing lies in the underbelly in a quick way. And especially like, malicious lies, you could say. This is a time to that telling the truth will set you free, but it maybe won't feel good for a while. Again, exposing the truth. Learning the pause button is going to be a big lesson. Like I had said just a few times ago, it is a big lesson. Aries, I love you guys, but you guys don't have the pause button. You think quicker than you speak, and things come out and you react quicker than you speak. Sometimes you cut people off too quickly, or you feel that intensity of like, oh, why did they say that? Pause. All right? Pause. That's going to be a big soul lesson for you guys and the cardinal signs, but especially you guys. I want to say too, trapped, and I know that doesn't sound very good to my Aries, but trapped is something that here, especially at the beginning, you are feeling trapped a little bit. Saturn Aries will feel trapped. It's coming here to teach you how to be okay with being present if you feel trapped, because Aries, you guys are always on to the next, kind of looking for what's on the other side, what's greener, those type of things, and not always present in the now and the here. So if you are feeling trapped, remember the spiritual teachings of feeling trapped. It's okay to be present, and you need to learn that. Again, not something Aries are very good at. It's you won't be trapped forever, and maybe not even right away, but more so when Saturn, and this is for all of the cardinal signs, when Saturn conjuncts, opposes, or squares within 3 degrees of your natal Aries placements or your natal other cardinal placements. That is when you're going to feel the more trapped. So if you have an Aries sun in 28 degrees, you're not going to feel so trapped until the very end of this cycle. Versus if you have Aries, the first day of Aries, the first degree, you're going to be feeling it in the beginning. Do you get what I'm kind of saying? And same with square. If you're an end of the sign Capricorn, you're going to be feeling it at the end. But if you're like a December 26th Capricorn, you're going to be feeling it right now. So that's going to be when that sort of trapped feeling comes. But remember, there is a spiritual teaching to all of it. This is bringing a level-headed energy to cardinal placements, but again, it's not going to be level-headed necessarily right away. This is time, this is lessons, and I know my mutable placements, you can ask any of them. Ask them what the last 3 years was like, and they will all tell you it was a process within all those things of Saturn I just told you about. Responsibilities, that there's going to be not all the things you want to do, but in the end, it will lead you to the biggest rewards. So Saturn is so interesting because it's a mix of energies. It's not always easy, and it's not easy, but remember, it brings the greatest rewards. This is a time where actions need to be thought out wisely with a plan and not just suddenly the way Aries likes it to be. And I talked about that, especially for my fixed placements with this upcoming solar eclipse. I'm looking at my legs right now, sidetrack, and they didn't have my usual lotion for tanning because, I got to get tan going down to New Orleans this week, and I had to use this other clear stuff, and I just messed it all up. I'm looking at my legs. I'm like, I am a disaster right now. I don't know if I can be wearing shorts down there. I'll still rock them. I don't care. So Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, we are dissolving, like I said. In Pisces, we were dissolving the boundaries. We were dissolving the illusions. With Saturn, Neptune, and Aries, we are building them back up and new ones. Saturn, Neptune dissolved old boundaries. And now, like I said, we were ending the zodiac in Pisces. We're beginning it in Aries. So we're building new ones. The last time these two planets were conjunct in Aries was 1703. The last time these two were conjunct in Aries. But what's been kind of interesting with these two planets, and they go into conjunction every 36 years. However, they were basically conjunct but in Pisces in 2025, and half of it within 3 degrees of each other. And so it's basically a double conjunction, you could say. They've been really playing out this energy together for at least a solid year. And now this is the true conjunction happening. I'm not going to beat around the bush like I don't think I have on this episode, but these are harder astrology placements for these two signs to be in. They just are. And again, more things that are going to be coming, especially on the 20th when this conjunction happens, revealing truths and in a shocking way. You may feel low drive or not feeling super passionate. That will feel better as Saturn slowly moves out of the 3-degree range from Neptune. But the first 6 weeks for my cardinal signs, you aren't going to be super motivated. Saturn slows things way the fuck down, and Neptune is spacey as fuck, okay? For my cardinal placements, though, treat this transit a little bit like you would for Mercury retrograde. If you sign a contract, make sure you read it closely. And that's what I mean by the Mercury retrograde. There's a little bit of trickery there for my cardinal placements. Paperwork trickery is definitely in the cards with this transit. And I said exposing, but this can be a transit when someone tries to pull a fast one on you or get by with something. So stay alert. And if you are on the other side of that coin, don't pull a fast one on someone else, because it isn't going to work out as you had hoped, okay? Not that I'm saying, we all, I guess, have the potential and probably have tried to pull a fast one on someone, so I'm not calling anyone out. But I'm just saying, if you are on the other side of that, don't pull a fast one on someone or try to sneak something past someone, because it will not work out for you. There might be a feeling like your dream got cut short, or like your dream isn't what you thought it was. Again, for my cardinal placements with Saturn, it either wants you to work harder for your dream. It's saying you're not going to be ready to be prepared for when this dream actually shows up because you're not working hard enough now. And sometimes we need that reality. Sometimes we're thinking we're doing enough and we actually aren't. So remember that. Saturn wants you to work harder if it didn't show up and say, hey, you're not going to be ready for it unless you put the work in now. And remember, sacrifice, that sacrifice part I talked a bunch about, or maybe the dream isn't meant for you, or it's just a prolonged for a reason. And sometimes no other reason than Saturn doing its thing, but having you wait for a dream really adds endurance, though, doesn't it? So Saturn, Neptune is bringing reality to your dream, and it can show up in one of these 4 ways I just mentioned. And in the end, if it's still working for you, but it seems to be like, oh, there's a stall in my dream job, there's a stall here, it's helping you add the endurance. So there is also this feeling of breaking out of a spell, a trance, something unseen, especially while these 2 planets were in Pisces. There's almost, you can collect things from the subconscious and you can still be stuck there a little bit. So you may be finally breaking free from this when these signs conjunct in the sign of Aries and feeling like you're not energetically being held back anymore for the unseen energy. There is a sober reality here, especially for anyone who didn't get sober in the Pisces. Well, maybe that drug it on. There's going to be some more sober reality here. Disappointments in others may be high. Cardinal signs have the most expectations. I know I talked about that on an episode, I think in Capricorn season actually, but cardinal signs have the most expectations of others, and often that's why they're let down a lot, or they really come on hard for perfectionism because they hold themselves very high to expectations. And they expect that from others. But Saturn and Aries will lead to some disappointment because the truth is, just because you do something a certain way doesn't mean that other people will or should. I say that. I have someone close to my life who's always like, well, I don't do it that way. Well, I don't do it that way. Well, I wouldn't. And I'm like, I'm always telling them, okay, well, that doesn't mean that the other person doesn't show up that way, right? Back to the individual part. We are all individuals and we all have different reactions and we all react differently. So just because you do something that way doesn't mean that someone else is wrong for them doing it that way, and you got to get over yourself. Aries, Cancers, they may become more cautious and less reactive, whereas my Libra, Capricorn placements may be more reckless and aggressive. It's going to unhinge some of my cardinal signs, while hinge up some of my other cardinal signs, and it might go back and forth while, especially over these next 3 years while Saturn is there. Neptune Aries conjunction is not going to be light and airy. It's going to be a little misplaced and displaced fire. This is a time where you need to shift directions. The shifting directions may not seem easy, but it may be a much harder path, but in the end, sometimes that path that's what is it? That's the path less followed. Whatever. The hard path makes you tough, okay? And it is worth it. I'm a tough bitch. I want you to be a tough bitch. There may be some exiting of relationships and friendships at this time because you realize they aren't going to fit into your future plans or show up the way you need them to show up in your life. So for my cardinal placements, sit down, see what you want these next 3 years to evolve like, what do you want them to look like? And then say, what new structures, what new responsibilities, what new consistencies do I need to bring in my life in order to achieve that? Use Saturn as a power, as a tool, because those are the lessons that's going to show up. And if you can get ahead of it and really look to see where you need to master these things, you're going to be a master of the lessons as each one comes. All right. So remember that. Last week's episode, the episode from 2 days ago and this week's episode will tie into the astrology for the next 2 weeks. I won't have another episode until after the this great conjunction because I will be away. So I love you all. Thank you. The best way to help support this podcast is to rate, review, send this out to someone. Thank you for my OGs who constantly do that and show up for me. I love you all. Goodbye.